In a world full of monsters, powers are not few and far between. Almost all monsters have some sort of special abilities to help them along, and with the cast switching between monsters and humans, that got us curious. Which of these crazy monsters turn human and humans turn monsters are the most powerful among them? I'm Caleb with Wicked Binge, and this is Hotel Transylvania Transformania Week 2 Powerful. But on the topic of powerful characters, today's video is brought to you by Raid: Shadow Legends. Raid is an immersive game with awesome champion characters, but also tons of powerful bosses, including the newest boss, the Hydra. In fact, each one of its heads is a complete boss battle on its own. The head of Blight is all about poison. The head of Mischief loves buffs and wants yours all to itself. The only way to stop the head of Torment is by hiding your champions with Veil buffs. The head of Decay makes healing actually lower their HP, the head of Suffering is the Hydra's tank head, and the head of Wrath is a super damage dealer. Good luck taking on all 6 of the Hydra's heads. And that's one of the things we really like about Raid, the immersive world. Raid has tons of bosses and champion characters that each have their own interesting backgrounds, as well as their own unique skills to be used in-game. And this is going to be a huge month for Raid. To start off, it's releasing a ton of new champions along with a brand new Faction Wars crypt for one of the best factions, the Shadowkin. Plus, there's a bunch of New Year events and tournaments, including a special fusion event where you can get one of Raid's newest legendary champions. Seriously, there's never been a better time to get started. And if you use my link in the description or scan my QR code, you'll get a free starter pack worth almost $30 to kickstart your game. We're talking a free champion Tayrel, 200k silver, 1 energy refill, 1 XP boost, and 1 ancient shard so you can summon awesome champions as soon as you get in-game. You'll find your extra rewards here in your inbox for the next 30 days only, so you don't miss out. It's all that easy. Just click the link in the description to get started. Thanks Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. We'll see you all in-game. Like the previous Hotel Transylvania list, we do have 2 things to mention. Firstly, we're going to be talking mostly about events from Hotel Transylvania 4, but we will be bringing up events and powers from the previous movies when related to their powers. Secondly, spoiler warning for Hotel Transformania, so maybe go watch the movie before you partake in this video. With the intro and rules out of the way, we can start talking about the strength of our characters, starting with the weakest and moving to the strongest character in the movie. Unfortunately, the gold medal of weakness belongs to Griffin. Griffin is probably the weakest non-human character in the franchise because the entirety of his power is his invisibility. So in this movie, where he doesn't even have access to that ability, it's no surprise he's the weakest. In the movie, he's relegated to holding onto Blobby because he has very few skills outside of invisibility. Our second weakest character is none other than Abraham Van Helsing. Helsing is over 100 years old and is mostly just a head and arms attached to a mechanical wheelchair. However, despite his lack of body, he still has an intense intelligence, can articulate his body in a multitude of shapes and positions that allow him to maneuver more particularly, and has a multitude of powerful weapons and inventions at his disposal. However, he is senile at times and doesn't think very far ahead, not to mention he's quite slow even while in the mechanical wheelchair.
I'll be right there!
Next we have Eunice Stein. Eunice ranks low because while she is relatively smart and decently strong, her strongest ability isn't really that great. She, like the other Frankensteins, has the ability to separate her body parts from her and utilize them in unique ways. She only really uses this to cast a shadow by throwing her head at a specific angle. She does seem to have relatively good aim, which is very helpful, and is skilled enough with a sword to chop off Frank's hair without harming him. But she is also very weak to fire and doesn't really know how to control a room that well, especially thanks to her voice, which annoys most people.
They're vicious, and they're very loud!
Her husband Frankenstein actually ranks next. Frank has a lot of the same abilities as Eunice, being able to split his body parts off him and allow them to move around on their own. Well, not only can his head move around on its own, but he is also quite strong, being one of the physically strongest characters on the list regularly.
I'm trying to scare you!
However, he does get pulled down because in his human form, there's nothing really to write home about. Next on our list may surprise some, but it's Winnie Werewolf. Winnie, as her name implies, is a werewolf and the youngest of the 3 werewolves on the list. Like all werewolves, she has increased strength and speed, as well as intense tracking skills due to her superhuman sight, hearing, and smell. She's also very energetic and doesn't have a lot of places to put out that energy, which can make her a pretty decent threat at times. However, her mother Wanda Werewolf ranks slightly higher. Wanda, much like her daughter, has increased strength and speed, although her being pregnant 99% of the time does decrease this. Combine this with the aforementioned tracking skills and she can be quite the threat. She also has a decent control over the gigantic army of pups that are her children, which makes her a much stronger threat. Though Wayne Werewolf ranks slightly higher than her. Wayne has all the same advantages as the previous 2 characters on the list: increased strength, speed, enhanced senses, sharp claws, and teeth that can be used to tear through creatures. Not to mention that he also seems to have slight control over the horde of pups, however, not nearly as much as Wanda. Due to the fact that he's not constantly pregnant, he is very slightly higher than Wanda. Next on our list is none other than Dennis Lochran. Dennis is half human and half vampire and didn't gain his powers until he was 5 years old. However, these powers are very strong, especially for someone of his age. Although he didn't use them much, if at all, in this movie, in the previous movies it's more than enough to destroy even the toughest of enemies. He has enhanced speed, strength, and assumed durability, can fly, has fangs that can extend and retract at will. This is probably only a short list of what abilities he possibly has. The only reason he doesn't rank higher is that he doesn't seem to have much control over these aforementioned powers. A surprise to some, but next on our list is Blobby. Blobby spends most of the movie stuck as a plate of inanimate gelatin, but that doesn't stop him from being powerful regularly. Blobby is made out of a large gelatin-like substance that is both sticky and bouncy, able to bounce blows off it and stick people inside of it depending on what is necessary. Blobby can also absorb things into his body, although it doesn't seem to kill them with this. He can also spawn Blobby dogs and Blobby babies out of his body seemingly at will. Blobby has a large array of abilities that make him powerful, but he's still severely outclassed by certain characters. The strongest member of Dracula's friend group, excluding the big man himself, ranks next, being Murray. Murray is a mummy who has shown a wide multitude of abilities at his disposal thanks to his curse-based origins. In this movie alone, he is shown to have the ability to summon sand to use to his advantage, such as catching and shifting Drac at will. He is also able to turn into a swarm of beetles at will, although the second movie it shows he's a bit out of shape. Murray might have more abilities at his disposal, but he doesn't use them very often. Ranking next on our list is monster hunter Erica Van Helsing. Erica was trained from a young age to hate and hunt monsters, and as such became very proficient in a wide variety of skills. Not only is she stealthy, knows how to pilot a blimp, drive a car and a boat, but has hundreds of different weapons in said blimp. Ranged weapons like crossbows and ballistas, as well as close quarter combat, trap rigging, dancing skills, and a wide variety of skills we may not know about. Erica ranks here because of her high proficiency and a wide variety of weapons at her disposal. Ranking right outside the top 3 is none other than Gigi the guinea pig. Gigi regularly is just a guinea pig with no special skills other than being round.
She's so cute.
Not for long.
However, after being hit by the monstrification ray, Gigi becomes severely strong, able to chew through metal, wood, and concrete, and incredibly durable. Gigi basically becomes a kaiju monster that is hard to take down, but she is easily defeated by the aforementioned ray. Earning our bronze medal of strength is Mavis Dracula. Mavis is a vampire and as such has a wide array of abilities at her disposal. Not only does she have the enhanced strength, agility, durability, and speed of a vampire, but she also has the enhanced sense of a vampire. She also has supersonic hearing, can transform into a bat at will, and is immune to Dracula's time-stopping abilities. She also has retractable fangs, the ability to fly even without her bat form, and above average intelligence. She ranks here because she doesn't have the experience of Dracula, but that doesn't pull her too far down. The silver medal of strength goes to the aforementioned Count Dracula. Dracula is a vampire much like Mavis, and as such has probably the widest array of abilities at his disposal. Besides enhanced strength and speed, retractable fangs, supersonic hearing, and the ability to turn into a bat, he can also levitate, transform into mist, has some sort of telekinetic ability, can hypnotize and manipulate people, and can even freeze time in the area around him. This is just the short list of his abilities and likely has even more abilities at his disposal. However, he grabs silver because he does get turned into a human in this film. As a human, he has none of these abilities and doesn't know how to be a human. He was scared of stepping into the sun, blinding himself, got bit by piranhas and mosquitoes, and nearly dies multiple times. If it wasn't for his time as a human, he would likely be number 1 on the list. However, surprisingly, the gold medal of strength goes to Jonathan Loughran. Johnny is the opposite of Dracula because he is actually really useful as a human. Since the first movie, he has been shown to be a survivalist and has a lot of skills, ranging from building fire to rock climbing to ziplining and everything in between. Sure, he's not a great liar and he's not very strong, but this is made up for in his array of skills. When he becomes a monster, however, he becomes a force to be reckoned with.
I'm a monster. Check out these big feet.
Even in his weakest monster form, he is able to run at near superhuman speed, break trees with his claws, and move his tail on its own. He can also fly, breathe fire, and grow to an enormous size that makes him even stronger. Even as a human, Johnny is relatively powerful, and as a monster, he increases that 100-fold, so he grabs the gold. But let us know in the comments section if you agree with our ranking, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge our Weak to Powerful playlist, where we break down who the most powerful characters are in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.